The CIA is casting a wide and rather public net on the internet, hoping to recruit Russian spies. A get-in-touch video aimed at Russian citizens with state secrets, Russians who love their country, but not where it's headed. Now, President Vladimir Putin and the invasion of Ukraine, they're never mentioned. You could call it the Putin in the room, a fact reinforced daily by Russian airstrikes in a war that Moscow's men in power still refuse to call by name. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
Tonight, the Russian armed forces carried out a concentrated strike with high-precision, long-range air and sea-based weapons against locations of Ukrainian armed forces.
I think it's also a sign of desperation, given how badly Russia is doing on the front lines.
We are returning home with new defense packages.
Even ballistic missiles, the most difficult to intercept, are now being routinely intercepted by Ukraine thanks to those Western weapon systems.
More ammunition, stronger weapons for the front, more protection for our people, more political support.
Also coming up, hotline in the Cold War. The Kremlin and the White House were once connected by phone, direct dialing to prevent war. Tonight, a question for Beijing and Washington. Who are you going to call?
So there's a number of areas where we believe it will benefit both of our countries to continue to communicate, and our intention has always been to maintain lines of communication with the PRC.
To our viewers watching on PBS in the United States and to all of you around the world, welcome. We begin the day with Russian airstrikes and Russian secrets. It is no secret that Moscow has no intention of changing course in its invasion of Ukraine. Overnight, Russian forces launched airstrikes on Kyiv that Ukrainian officials today described as exceptionally intense. The head of Kyiv's military administration says the Russian attack used drones, cruise missiles, and probably ballistic missiles. Ukraine's chief military commander said that defense systems were able to destroy all of the Russian missiles within Kyiv's airspace. Debris fell across several of the capital's districts, causing a fire in one non-residential building. Recent days have seen a flurry of Russian airstrikes. Well, months before Russia began its invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. went public with intelligence that suggested the Kremlin, despite its denials, was planning to start a war. Well, in February of last year, that intelligence proved to be spot on. It is impossible to measure the value of intelligence, but ask any general from Berlin to London to Washington, and they will tell you it's better to have too much intel than not enough. Well, apparently the CIA thinks there has never been a better time to recruit spies in Russia, Russian spies. The U.S. intelligence agency is using social media and the dark net to extend an invitation to Russian citizens who may have access to state secrets to get in touch. The invitation comes in the form of a video that speaks to Russians who love their country, but not where it is going. Take a look.
Это моя Россия. Это всегда будет моя Россия. Я выстою. Моя семья выстоит. Мы будем жить достойно, благодаря моим действиям.
Well, this attempt to recruit Russians to be spies, it's certainly not classified information. In fact, the Kremlin says it is aware of the CIA video. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says that Russian security forces are monitoring the information space in the face of continued Western activity.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. But I'm convinced that our special services are also monitoring this space in the necessary way. Given that, and we all know perfectly, the CIA and other Western intelligence services are not reducing their activity on the territory of our country.
All right, I want to bring in now Dmitry Alperovich. He's a cyber policy and security expert. He's been a special advisor to the Pentagon. He now advises the Department of Homeland Security. Dmitry, it's good to have you on the program. Let me ask you, why do you think the CIA considers the here and now to be an unprecedented time and opportunity to reach out to Russians who may have state secrets to share?
Well, we might very well be living in the golden age of recruitments of Russian sources right now. And both the CIA and, frankly, the FBI have been pretty aggressive in their campaigns. This is not the first video that the U.S. government has put out urging Russian officials to contact U.S. government to become a source for U.S. intelligence community. And they're indicating that this is working. You've had hundreds of thousands, potentially as many as 1 million people have left Russia. A lot of people are very dissatisfied with where the country is going with this war, so they're ripe for being targeted by the U.S. intelligence community.
So let me ask you to put on your cybersecurity expert hat here. The CIA says that, prospective spies, they can trust the darknet, a Tor browser, to get in touch with the CIA. Now, is it really possible for Russians to communicate with the Central Intelligence Agency by using something like, I guess, a 007 phone number?
Well, the Tor browser is actually widely used by a number of people around the world, dissidents as well as others that want to focus on privacy. So it's a way to both browse anonymously to websites, to communicate with people anonymously. It's fully encrypted. It's been in use for about 20 years, so it's very well understood and analyzed technology. So it's quite secure if you follow the instructions on how to use it appropriately.
And were you struck, Dmitry, by what was not said in this video? They didn't mention the words Vladimir Putin once, and they did not mention the war in Ukraine. Is there a reason for this noticeable absence?
Well, recruiting sources is always very tricky. You're actually asking someone to betray their country, and you want to have a pitch that is soft. So in this particular case, it's more about trying to help the country versus to betray it. And, we'll see if it's effective potentially decades down the road when the history of this period is written. But I think it's the right thing to do to not be overly pushy, overly criticizing, and make it clear to people that they're trying to help the country versus to betray it.
Is there a decent amount, a promising reserve of discontented, disgruntled Russians who perhaps the CIA could tap into?
I think there is, and there's been reports just this week that there have been a number of even senior officials within the Russian government, including governors, that have been trying to resign from their positions and have been basically told by the Kremlin that not only will they not be allowed to resign, but they may face criminal penalties if they keep pushing this issue. So there's quite a lot of people that are not just unhappy with the direction, but are also very unhappy with the fact that they're no longer welcome in Western societies, that they can no longer, corruption is very widespread in Russia, of course, they can no longer stash their money overseas, send their families as easily to spend money in the Cannes and South France and other great destinations. So those are the people that the CIA and FBI want to target for recruitment.
And the Kremlin, it is aware, apparently, that people are not happy and that the likelihood that someone will betray his or her country is high. The punishment for being a traitor has been increased in just the last year. Do you think what the CIA is doing now with this video to recruit spies, do you think that is going to, stakes even greater for Russians who want to do something to end what they perceive as madness in their own country?
Well, the stakes have always been high. If you're caught as a traitor in Russia, or even if you're accused unfairly as being a spy, as we now have with journalists, particularly the Wall Street Journal reporter, that there's been accused of being a spy unfairly by the Putin regime, you can be locked up for life. You can be locked up for many, many years in the labor camps. So the people that are going to be contacting these agencies are well aware of the risks, and they have to balance it out and determine if there is an opportunity for them to potentially one day get citizenship in a Western country and set up for a new life there.
The CIA has made it a point to say that with this video, they're not advocating any type of domestic unrest in Russia. But I was also struck by the fact that the CIA did not say that they that this campaign would not advocate or maybe lead to regime change or change at the top in Russia. I mean, it could be understood as a catalyst for getting rid of Vladimir Putin, couldn't it?
I don't think so. I think the people that are most likely to be receptive to these pitches are going to be mid-career bureaucrats. You're, I think, very unlikely to recruit anyone very senior within the Putin entourage that would potentially be capable of orchestrating a coup against him. And coups are always very dangerous because you don't know what's going to come next. Even if you have someone who's working for you that might orchestrate a coup, there's no guarantee that they'll continue working for you, and they may turn out to be worse than the person that they replaced.
Dmitry, before we let you go, you say this could be the golden age for recruiting Russian spies. For Western intelligence in general, you know, they were spot on with the information they made public leading up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Are we also living in maybe a golden age of being able to act on reliable intelligence?
We have seen a complete sea change in how intelligence is used in the United States in the last 2 years, because it used to be when you're collecting this secret information, you lock it up, you let very few people see it. What the U.S. government has done is by publicizing it, they've been able to actually alter Russian plans. We know that Vladimir Putin wanted to have a false flag operation that would justify his invasion of Ukraine. Because of the intelligence that has been released, he was unable to do so, and that has impacted his ability to justify this illegal aggression.
Dmitry Alperovich, it's good talking with you. Excellent analysis and context to help us understand what's going on in the shadows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Ukraine's military says that it is making progress in the battle for the eastern city of Bakhmut. In recent days, Ukrainian forces have reportedly reclaimed about 20 square kilometers of territory around the city. But Ukraine's grip inside Bakhmut, that's a different story.
Ukrainian troops are paying a high price for their efforts to liberate the flashpoint city of Bakhmut. This soldier took a direct hit from a mortar shell. He says his helmet saved his life. On Monday, the troops' top commander said they'd made their first significant advances, despite having fewer resources and personnel than their enemies. Russia's defense ministry acknowledged Ukraine's attempts to capture territory around Bakhmut, but denied they had been successful.
To the north and south, the enemy made major attempts to break through our troops' defenses. We repelled all attacks by units of Ukraine's armed forces. No breakthroughs in our defenses occurred.
Bakhmut is the scene of the longest and fiercest fighting of the war. Controlling it is strategic for both sides. Moscow sees Bakhmut as a stepping stone to attacking other cities. Kyiv says keeping up its defense is buying time for its military to prepare for a major counter-offensive to retake Russian-occupied territory. At the forefront of Russia's Bakhmut offensive is the private Wagner army. It suffered major losses, and its leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has persistently accused Moscow of failing to properly supply his army with ammunition. Now, a new scandal is brewing. On Monday, the Washington Post claimed that, back in January, Prigozhin offered to betray Russian troop positions to Ukrainian intelligence in return for Ukraine pulling back its troops in Bakhmut. The Post cited a U.S. intelligence leak and added that Prigozhin's offer had been rebuffed by Ukraine, which did not trust him. Prigozhin has dismissed the allegations as nonsense. He denies talking to any Ukrainian intelligence officials. And Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has also called the reports a hoax. The infighting on the Russian side is intense, but whatever the truth, it seems neither Russia nor Ukraine can afford to concede Bakhmut, and so the brutal fight for the city continues.
Japan and China have used a new military hotline for the first time on Tuesday. Years of negotiation culminated in a 20-minute phone call between the Japanese defense minister and his Chinese counterpart. A similar hotline has been in place between the Pentagon and the Chinese Defense Ministry since 2008, but that has not always worked. Washington says that Beijing refused to pick up the phone after shooting down a suspected Chinese spy balloon off of the U.S. coast back in February. You may remember that. The presence of the spy balloon also led U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to postpone a visit to China. But both sides have moved to improve what is an alarming lack of communication, especially given the growing tensions over Taiwan. President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, met with China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, last week. Here's the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman on those talks.
The two sides had candid, in-depth, substantive and constructive discussions on removing obstacles to improve China-US relations and prevent deterioration. The two sides also exchanged views on international and regional issues of common concern, including the Asia-Pacific situation and Ukraine. Both sides agreed to continue to make good use of this strategic communication channel.
Well, I'm joined now by Tong Zhao. He's a senior fellow in the Nuclear Policy Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He's also a visiting research scholar at Princeton University's Science and Global Security Program. Mr. Zhao, it's good to have you on the program. I want to talk in just a moment about the dangers of how the Taiwan issue is being discussed inside China. But first, China and its links with the outside world. How dangerous is this lack of fast communication channels between the U.S. and Chinese leaderships?
Well, it's not really the lack of communication channels. The channels are already existing. There are actually more than one hotlines at senior official levels between the two. The challenge is how can we ensure the hotline and other communication channels will actually be used in a time of crisis. And so far, what we are seeing is often China refuses to pick up the phone because China wants to impose pressure on the other side at a time of crisis. And in China's own system, it is becoming increasingly centralized. So the military officials at the front line, they are also reluctant to answer the phone from their American counterparts because they need to first get approval from the political leadership before talking to the American officials. So that also makes it very hard to have substantive exchanges at a time of crisis.
Well, is that the problem, Mr. Zhao, that the hotline should actually be between whoever's in the White House and Xi Jinping? Because in China, Xi Jinping is at the top of the food chain, and he's the one who can make the decisions. I mean, are they not connecting the right people?
Well, there is actually a presidential level hotline between US and China that was established in 1998, but it was rarely used, at least according to public report. It may also, be a result of the personal preferences of specific top leadership. Mr. Xi, for example, may not be so keen as in terms of his personality to respond quickly in a crisis and to give quick answers to his foreign counterparts. He may need time to think through, and that makes maybe him reluctant to use the phone to directly talk with the American president.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you could argue that he could answer the phone and say, President Biden, I need to think about it, I'll call you back. But obviously, he doesn't want to do that. These talks between Jake Sullivan and Wang Yi, what impact, if any, do you think they're going to have on, reestablishing a hotline and offering maybe paths to de-escalation?
I think it is a positive sign. For a long time, Chinese diplomats simply refused to communicate with their American counterparts. The American ambassador, Mr. Nick Burns, wasn't able to meet with his Chinese counterpart for months, after he arrived in Beijing. But now I think the Chinese side is showing a stronger interest in resuming some of the regular communication channels. There has been signs of resumed operational level engagement between the two sides, not necessarily on highly sensitive national security issues, but on less sensitive issues, climate change, economic relationship, etc. I think that demonstrates a willingness on Chinese part to gradually stabilize the U.S.-China relationship, because China is still very much dependent on American technology, resources, investments, etc.
Mr. Zhao, you recently published an article in Foreign Affairs. We've pulled a quote from that we want to share with our viewers because we think this really got our attention. You write, the dynamics among China's political leadership, its policy elite, and the broader public have generated an internal feedback loop that is not entirely within Xi's comprehension or control. This could result in China's being fully mobilized for war, even without Xi deciding to attack Taiwan. Now, that is a scary situation that you are describing. How likely is that to happen? In other words, war with China and the U.S. could break out, and Xi Jinping would really not want that to happen.
Well, I think it is important for the international community to understand how a very centralized Chinese system can generate a de facto mobilization towards war without anyone actually making an explicit decision to go to war. And this comes from, first and foremost, Mr. Xi's personal sense of mission to resolve the Taiwan issue. And that personal preference become such a strong incentive in a highly centralized system for the operational level officials, for the policy leads, to all cater to his vision and to amplify his own thinking. So everyone is trying to think of innovative ideas of how we can achieve coercive unification. No one raises questions about why do we have to do this on an accelerated time frame? Why the hurry? So no one is asking the basic question. Everyone tries to make it happen. I think that also makes the top leadership increasingly convinced that this is the right thing to do, and it's actually within China's capacity to do it. I think that's how this internal feedback loop is particularly dangerous.
Yeah, and at the National People's Congress back in March, Xi Jinping told his generals to be prepared for war. Now, if we put that in this feedback loop that you have described, he's basically telling them that a war is going to happen, isn't he?
Not necessarily. I mean, what he, according to what we know, is Mr. Xi wanted the military to develop the option, the capability to take military action against Taiwan by 2027. That doesn't mean Mr. Xi has a desire to start war by 2027, because it's still common consensus within the international research community that China's top goal, option is to achieve unification through coercion, without actually fighting a war. But the thing is, when he orders the military to develop such an option, that sends a very strong incentive for the military to develop all sorts of capabilities, for the defense industry to also be highly mobilized, for the policy experts to generate ideas of how to build the necessary military means to fight and win a war, and how to build economic resiliency so that China wouldn't be undermined by international sanctions, how China can win international public opinion. Everyone is thinking in the same direction. No one is raising questions. There is no one that, there's no one to hit the brake in the system that is already mobilized itself towards a war.
Is there anyone around Xi Jinping? We've got 30 seconds left here, Mr. Zhao. I mean, I'm just thinking what they're probably thinking in the White House about this. Is there anyone around Xi Jinping who has his ear who could say, Mr. President, we need to pull back, we're making a mistake. Is there someone who's willing to say that knowing that Xi Jinping may not want to hear it?
I don't think we know, but I personally haven't seen any evidence of senior level people willing to take the personal risk to question or challenge Mr. Xi's vision.
Yeah, and I think that's a very scary reality that you described there. Mr. Tong Zhao with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Fascinating talking with you. It helps us understand more about what's happening between Washington and Beijing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the day is almost done. The conversation, it continues online. You'll find us on Twitter, either at DW News. You can follow me on Twitter at Brent Goff TV. And remember, whatever happens between now and then, tomorrow is another day. We'll see you then, everybody.